If your license is suspended in Florida and the state says you need an SR-22 or an FR-44, SR-22 Direct can help you get the right policy started today. Here's what you need to know before you get back on the road. Florida uses two different financial responsibility filings, SR-22 and FR-44. Both are certificates that you file with the state to prove that you have the required insurance coverage. Neither one is a separate insurance policy by itself. The difference is why the filing is required and how much coverage the state requires you to carry. An SR-22 is usually tied to non-DUI situations, such as driving without insurance, being involved in an accident without proper coverage, too many violations, or certain license reinstatement issues. It tells the state that your policy meets Florida's required liability limits for that filing. Florida's SR-22 liability minimums are 10, 20, 10. That means $10,000 per person for bodily injury, $20,000 per accident for bodily injury, and $10,000 for property damage. An FR-44 is different. In Florida, an FR-44 is commonly required after a DUI conviction and comes with much higher liability limits. Florida FR-44 coverage is typically $100, $300, $50. That means $100,000 per person for bodily injury, $300,000 per accident for bodily injury, and $50,000 for property damage. The important thing is knowing which filing the state requires in your case. If your suspension is tied to a DUI, you may need an FR-44 instead of an SR-22. If your suspension is tied to driving uninsured, an accident without insurance, or another financial responsibility issue, you may need an SR-22. SR-22 Direct can help you sort out which policy or filing fits your situation. Once the filing is active, keeping your coverage enforced matters. If your policy lapses or cancels while the SR-22 or FR-44 is still required, the state can be notified, which may lead to another suspension or delay in getting your license back. In many Florida cases, drivers must maintain an SR-22 or FR-44 for about 3 years, but the exact requirement can depend on the reason for the suspension and what the state requires in your case. The safest move is to treat it as a continuous requirement and to avoid any gaps in your coverage. If you switch insurance companies, make sure the new policy and any required filings are active before your old coverage ends. A gap in coverage can trigger a notice to the state, lead to another suspension, and create problems with completing your required filing period. Insurance costs often increase after a serious driving violation, especially after DUI, reckless driving, driving without insurance, or an accident. The exact increase depends on your driving history, location, vehicle, coverage limits, and the company you choose. Florida rates can vary a lot from carrier to carrier, so comparing multiple options can make a real difference. The filing fee itself is usually manageable, often $15 to $50 as a one-time cost. The bigger financial impact usually comes from the insurance premium, especially if you need an FR-44 with higher limits. If you don't own a vehicle, a non-owner policy may be an option. This can provide liability coverage when you drive vehicles you do not own and is often less expensive than a policy that covers a vehicle that you do own. If the state requires an SR-22 or FR-44, make sure the non-owner policy can include the correct filing. Set up autopay, keep your policy active, and make sure any required SR-22 or FR-44 is in place before canceling your old coverage. Visit SR22Direct.com to get your Florida SR-22 or FR-44 policy started today and compare rates. Or call or text 888-620-SR-22. That's 888-620-7722. Agents are standing by to help you get legal and back on the road today.